Vegan Hannah's video doing the singles shadow tag the other day. She posted the video a couple of days ago. I'll post her channel in the description box below. And I realized that I evidently missed this tag that evidently came out some months ago. I was evidently living under a rock at that point in time. I was probably traveling, you know. Important and interesting things usually happen when I'm traveling, and I totally miss them, unfortunately. But I thought, you know, this is so exciting and I want to do it. So we're doing it today. And quickly mentioning that I have this whole look done in another video with my December custom made palette that is sort of a palette ideal for, or my ideal palette for the New Year's. And interestingly, I did this look like 3 hours ago, but it looks a lot more blended now. It came out super patchy and I haven't touched it, but it kind of blended itself. I don't know how, but it did. Also, for every one of these single shadows, I'm going to do a swatch on the back of my hand, and I'm going to insert swatches in different lighting on the right hand side of the screen, because a lot of you have asked me to do more swatches and I have to oblige. So let's get started. The first tag says your current favorite single eyeshadow. And beauties, because it's very difficult for me to rank my favorite of all of the maybe even 1,000 single shadows that I have, I was thinking to myself, if I'm thinking about a very high quality, beautiful shadow, what's the first thing that comes to my mind? And beauties, the one that comes to my mind is my top favorite shadow at the moment from Clionadh, which is Regal. I know I've talked about this a lot. This is one of their glitter vibrant multichromes. I think this was the very first glitter vibrant multichrome they came out with. And I have a full swatch of all of the glitter vibrant multichromes in this channel. This shadow looks so beautiful. So it has a purple sort of base with a kind of a gold hue over it, and then from my angle I see the hue that's over it is kind of a blue to teal. It's such a special shadow. You know, I love purples, and I also love purples that go into teals. So yeah, this shadow had to be it. Okay, the next question says, what was your previous favorite shadow before your current came along? And for that, I have a shadow I don't think I've ever talked about in this channel, but this shadow was one of my favorites for a very long time. And again, when I heard that question, this is the first thing that came to my mind. Now, was this the exact one that I liked before Regal would have come to mind? Who knows? But this came to my mind, so we're talking about it. This is Solar Expansion from Pheromones. And when this one came out, it was such a special shade because it has a very dark base and multiple shifts at different angles. And of course, one of the shifts is sort of a neutralish, bronzy, coppery type of a shift, which you all know I love. As much as I don't like neutral colors, regular neutral colors, I love multichromes with a neutral shift, which this color has. Pheromones has some very interesting multichromes that have a neutral shift. We're going to kind of talk about another one also. So this shade kind of has a black base, and as I mentioned, from you all's angle, you can see the black undertone with the coppery, bronzy sort of shifts. And then from my angle, you see teal to gold. The next question is your favorite one and done single shadow. And for this one, I have two because I actually have four, but it's actually two, and you're gonna see why. So the first one is Exoplanet from Pheromones, which is another one that has a neutral shift. And this one also has kind of a dark base. I'm telling you all, I love singles with neutral kind of shifts. With these kinds of multichromy black base kind of colors, it's a lot easier to do one and done looks because you just put this color on your eyes and it looks like you're wearing multiple eyeshadows. But of course, you can still wear other eyeshadows, mattes, and so on with this as well. And for the second answer to this question, I actually have 4 options, but we're just going to swatch 3 of them because one of them is in the Deep Sea Treasures palette from Cliona. And the specific multichrome that we're talking about is this shift. So this is the Terra Moon's version called Blood Moon, which is essentially a black base. And you're going to see from some angles a red shift going to a gold shift. And I have 4 versions of this exact shade. I have the Terra Moon's version as I'm swatching for you all. I also have the Cosmetics version. This is Dark Side. Again, exactly the same shade. I mean, these are enough of a dupe that you can assume they're exactly the same shade. And you're going to see the shifts and you can compare them yourself. And then I also have in front of me Midnight Sun from Divina. And as I mentioned, there is a 4th option here, which is from the Deep Sea Treasures palette. But of course, you have to purchase the palette. I don't think you can purchase that palette as singles if you want to use that color. With this shadow, you can use a different color in the outer V, you know, a deep purple or something, but I have worn this as one and done because I almost feel like this doesn't need any additional help and support. Just showing you the swatches on my fingers. So I think this is definitely one of my one and done shadows. Okay, tag number 4 asks for a single shadow that I think is underrated. And for this, I picked a single shadow from a brand I don't think I've ever talked about in this channel. And that is Bernovich number 186. And this is not a multichrome. I would call this just a regular shimmer, but this is one of my favorite shadows. And I felt like I can't do this tag without talking about this shadow because this shadow is so beautiful and super creamy and amazing. From you all's angle, it looks kind of creamy. And then there is kind of a, I don't want to call it purple shift because it's not a very evident purple shift, but you see the color that it goes into in the shade. That's the color I'm talking about. And then from my angle, when I look at it, I see yellow gold, but a very mild yellow gold. You know, it's not super yellow. It's kind of cool toned. It's so beautiful. It's one of those super romantic shades that is ideal for Valentine's Day. Tag number 5 asks for a single shadow that's not worth the hype. And friends, I have talked about holochromes in my channel, and this is a Royal Holo from Touch of Glam. I did a video that I never posted. I should probably still post that video with some of Touch of Glam's holochromes that I purchased. I purchased the bundle from them like early last year. I was just not that impressed. And this, I think, is the least impressive one. I feel like if I'm buying holochromes, I want them to be sparkly and shifty and holographic looking. So I'm seeing purple when I'm looking at it, and you all are seeing blue. And I think what I was expecting was more of, you know how black-based multichromes just transition in the color? Like it goes from green to gold to blue to whatever. That's kind of what I was expecting, because the transition in this is not as evident. And even the color shifts is more like the hue on top is this color, not that the actual base color kind of changes. Since then, I've bought holochromes from other brands like Glam Shop, like Glaminatrix. I even reviewed holochromes from Glaminatrix in this channel, and in palettes from different brands that really had an extreme shift. And here I was just like, I don't see as much of a shift. Like this is just like a blue holochrome. And I think this is like $22 for this shade, which I don't think it was worth it. Okay, friends, number 6 says the shadow that best represents your favorite singles brand. I don't know if I can call this my favorite singles brand. Again, the term favorite, you know, I love a lot of brands, but I was like, okay, let's talk about a brand I haven't swatched from yet and that is in my category of favorite brands, and I picked my top single from this brand, and that is Glaminatrix's Good Day Beauties. This shade. This was from one of the palettes, the Australia palette. I don't remember the name of the palette. This was from that palette, and I purchased it way after that because I didn't buy the palette. At that point in time, I didn't know Glaminatrix. And I afterwards was like, the name of the palette was You Beauty. Afterwards, I was like, I should have bought that palette. I missed out. Because this is such a beautiful single. Maybe I like this for kind of the same reasons as why I like that Burnovich shade, but this is much more multichromy. So as you can see in the pan, there is a fiery orange kind of a shift. And I think you all are seeing that fiery orange going into a shade that is very similar to what that Burnovich shade looked like in the shade, right? It kind of looks like a variation of purple and pink if I were to paint this. And that is so beautiful. And then from my angle, I see bright gold going into bronze. It's so beautiful. I even see in certain places it goes into sort of like neon red. From the angle I'm looking at it is so, so, so beautiful. I do have a second option for this one just because I had to. This is one of my absolute favorite singles that made me fall in love with Pheromones, and it is Hyperion. Like, if someone tells me what is your top 3 favorite multichromes, Hyperion is one of them. Honestly, it could even be top 1. So I had to talk about it. I had to. I couldn't do this without talking about Hyperion, because Hyperion is the smooth version of Exoplanet for me. So Exoplanet has some shimmers inside. You know, Exoplanet kind of looks like it's made up of tiny glittery particles or shimmery particles, when Hyperion looks super smooth. But the shifts look very similar. So again, you all are seeing the neutral, sort of bronze, sort of honestly brown shift. And then from my angle, I see teal. And this is a beautiful, and it goes into copper. Such a beautiful shade. And this was, if I didn't mention this already, this was one of the shades that made me fall in love with Pheromones. Okay, friends, number 7 is a single shadow you grew to like. This one is from Copacetic. This is Shrooms. It's sort of a very flaky, you might even see particles going everywhere as I'm swatching this. It's sort of a flaky color that has a kind of an orangey base with a hue of green to gold. First of all, it is kind of translucent, which is great because you can use this over other colors for a completely different effect. And I haven't seen this kind of a shade be translucent. Usually these kinds of shifts have an opaque base, and then the shifts are super wet looking. That's another unique thing about it. There are a lot of orange to green shifts, or orange bases with a green shift or a green hue on top, but you don't see a lot of them be this wet looking. And that was just like, ooh, wait a minute. The other thing about it is that from this angle, so the angle I'm looking at it, it kind of looks as if it has just a wet base with a hue that is just a mild pink going into orange. And that was also super, super interesting to me. And then it even has a shift of white. Okay, friends, we're approaching the end. Number 8 asks for a single shadow you would give to your worst enemy. It's funny because I remember Hannah in her video really analyzing this question. But to me, this essentially means like a bad shadow. Like when I think about my collection, what are some of the shadows, or what is the number 1 shadow that I'm like, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have paid for that. Now, I do have a lot of shadows that I'm like, I paid $20 for this. It was so not worth that. But maybe at $13 it would have been worth. So we're not talking about those. I'm just going to talk about a shadow that I thought was not good. I made this decision completely independent of Hannah's video, but we ended up actually picking the same shadow. But I already was thinking about this collection as not the best release of this brand this year. In fact, I talked about it in my 5 worst, 5 best of this year. And this was in the list of 5 worst of this year. And for this question, I picked something from Luxie Beauty, which kind of means and maybe the shadow is not even worth at $3, you know? And the shade is Dirty Martini. Maybe there's a universe where I can use this shade and it's gonna look exciting. I love the fact that Luxie is experimenting. So I don't want to tell Luxie, hey, don't experiment with these kinds of shades. As I mentioned in my top worst things I tried this year, there are no exciting shifts in this shadow. This is sort of a mustard color, and I think you could have made mustard interesting maybe if this was a matte shadow, but this is sort of a satin shade. It's not shimmer either. Like, it's kind of confusing what this shade even is, because it's not really shimmery, but it is kind of creamy. So it is, and it has a sheen. You see that in the shade, in the light? So I would call this a satin shade. The shifts are not interesting. I also feel like it doesn't come out evenly on my hand. You see, like, the center part is a different color than the outside. Yeah, maybe I'll experiment with this shade just to experiment, but I don't see myself really using this shade a lot. Let's say that. I have tagged my top 5, bottom 5 video that I keep referencing in the description below if you're interested in seeing what I had to say in that video. Okay, beauties, we're approaching the end. Number 9 asks for a single shadow you would pay double for. And I feel like it kind of goes without saying that there are a lot of Luxie shadows nowadays that I would pay double for. And I have swatched some of them in my recent videos. I did 2 videos in the past couple of weeks. One was for wintry singles that I have. I did some Luxie shades there. There was another one, Christmassy shades, that I have. I did some Luxie shades there. And I wanted to do something different. So I picked another Luxie shade that I'm like, I would totally pay double for this. The shade that comes to mind is Fuzzy Flamingo. This shade is so beautiful. It's like one of those super wet looking pink bases that can look coral from some angle and has a hue of blue from some angle. I have a feeling this shade is totally going to be in one of my custom made palettes not too far in the future. You see how wet looking this shade is, and think about it. This shade is like $3, or sometimes you might be able to get it at $2 in a sale. It's insane. Totally a shade that some brands would sell for double that price, or maybe even triple that price. So from my angle, I see a blue hue that goes into a gold hue. And I see a pinkish base, but I think you all are seeing a coral base going into a golden green. Okay, beauties, we are at the end. The last tag asks for a single shadow that best represents you. And again, I wanted to exclude the singles that I have already swatched in this channel, that I've presented in some other video, but a single that answered this question. So I picked another single from Luxie. This is Groovy Baby, and if you all have been watching my channel, you know that I love this kind of shade. So green base with a copper hue. And from my angle, I actually see a gold hue. This is a beautiful, beautiful shade. This is another shade I would have paid double for. So again, a green base with a shift that goes kind of neutralish. Maybe that's why I like about it. It's kind of copper, kind of brown, you know, metallic brown from some angles. And then from my angle, the hue is actually gold. And to be honest with you, I never thought about it this way, but this single has a lot in common with Hyperion, which is another one of my favorite shades from Terra Moons. We just watched it. And also Exoplanet. So I'm seeing patterns. Thank you so much for being here with me. If you've done this tag, I would love to hear your answers to these questions. Write them to me in the comments below. I love you all. Have an amazing day. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and you haven't given it a thumbs up yet. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you watched this far and are not subscribed yet. Have an amazing day, and until next time. Bye.